Hey, good afternoon. We are back, and it is Tuesday, and a lot of stuff happening in the world. A lot of stuff happening in the U.S. Actually, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world, and we're going to uh, talk about the U.S. today. But there are actually some fairly significant things happening globally, um, and we'll come to them. But today I want to talk about the U.S. and in particular I want to talk about the events in Minneapolis and events involving the police, not just in Minneapolis but elsewhere. And it feels like we need to wade into these territories. We're in some just really painful times, and I think what I want to say is I don't want to get all I don't want to get left brain on this, right? I don't want to sort of it's a disservice to try to break things down and the what ifs and what about this and what about that, and which is so often what we do as human beings, right? Because we want to human beings want to make sense of the world, and we want to know that the world that we've come to know and we come to make sense of will be the same world that exists tomorrow and the next day and the next day, right? The good things. We want to believe that the bad things are going to change and they will get better tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And that's how we are every day when we wake up in the morning. That's largely how it is. And one of the sort of resistances we have, or I say one of the defense mechanisms that we employ when things aren't working out the way we think they're going to work out, is we go into our rational mind and we start saying, well, how do I make sense of this thing that just happened? Because if I can make sense of it, then that will mean that the world that I've come to rely on, the solid ground that I'm standing on, will continue to be solid, and the rug isn't going to get pulled out from under me, and I'm going to be okay. And I don't have to go back and reevaluate all of the reasons that I've come to adopt for why things are the way they are, and for understanding life. And I don't want to go into that rational mindset. And instead, I want to talk about some things that are really on the table and very difficult to talk about. Before I do that, let's just do our first top hat, and it's going to be up in about 15 seconds or so. And we don't have the top hats today are just kind of standard questions, just to just answer them, and it's all good. So again, top hat is up. Hey, so there's a when we're in this world of race relations, in this world of intercultural relationships, in this world that we are in social 19, along with all the really fascinating insights and the really just kind of interesting things that happen when people from different parts of the world and different cultures and norms and mores and customs and so on, when they all come together, they create this really fascinating sort of a tapestry of life that for somebody like me is just utterly fascinating, right? But there's another side to things, and in one part of the human condition is revolves around this question of power and power imbalances, and you never have a complete balance of power in the world. I mean, it's not possible, and there are always some groups that have more power and other groups that have less power, and along with those imbalanced power relationships are legacies. And the legacies of an understanding of what that power imbalance has meant for ancestors and for present day reality, and what it may mean for the future. And for some groups more than other groups that have been had have had access to less power and have been, victims of or defined in some way by, the activities or the actions or the events of people with more power. And, so that's heavy. There's a lot of heaviness there. There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of just deep wounds that sometimes we keep talking about those wounds, or people talk about those wounds and they talk about them because sometimes we have to just continue to talk about them because it's the only thing that makes sense of it. And then, other people, we hear it, we don't understand, and yet the other group talks, and then we get into our minds and we start rationalizing and so on. And I'm watching this play out in Minneapolis right now, and where there is just such deep grief over the killing of George Floyd, first off, and this other young man, Deontay, on Sunday. And it's just, there's so much, it's just, it like calls, it's like it reaches down and just calls forth such grief. And then what happens is people who don't necessarily understand the grief, all we can do is start rationalizing it in some way, right? So it's kind of like there's this classic kind of difference between men and women that a lot of times, men will go into these are these gender stereotypes. And again, it's just men and women. So we're not looking at the whole breadth of gender, which we did last class. And I thought in particular, Finn and Chloe did an awesome job of laying that out for us. But men there's this kind of stereotype of men who just kind of want to solve problems, right? And women are like, I don't need to solve the problem. I just need to sit with me and just be with this issue. But we get into that problem solver mode. And it's not true of all men. It's not true of all women. But so here's a couple things I want to do. I want to look at the ways in which numbers and rationality can really benefit us to look at things. And I want to look at can bring us closer to understanding some things that are happening. And then I want to look at the ways in which it actually takes us away. So let's bring Quinn on first off. And Quinn, you are coming on in a hot second here. But we can start talking while they bring you on the screen. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I hope what I was just saying right there makes sense. And there's a way in which maybe it's not supposed to make sense. There's just a way in which maybe it's just, I don't know. Tell me what you heard me say.
Well, I heard you talking about, I'm assuming that you're talking about Deontay Wright, who was killed when the lady police officer had pulled out. So they say that she meant to pull out a taser to tase him, but instead pulled out a gun and shot him. And that's what I'm assuming that you're talking about, and how the problems associated with those mistakes happening.
Yeah. And people gathering, right? People gathering in a public space to express their anger and to express their grief. And sometimes I think people who aren't part of certain communities don't really understand that. But yet it's there. And sometimes numbers matter, right? So let me just start with the numbers thing really fast. Are you aware that today the United States pulled the J&J vaccine off the market temporarily?
I am, yeah, because of all the side effects with it.
Yeah. So what are you aware of that this are the side effects? Like, what are you?
I know that some people were having seizures, and a lot of people are getting pretty sick from them, rather almost as sick as when they have COVID.
Yeah. Okay. So the J&J vaccine, the main reason it's being pulled off is because of this unique kind of form of clotting that's happening. And And do you have any idea how many vaccines we've given out? Do you have any idea how many people it's affecting?
Not of just Johnson and Johnson. I know total it's probably about a third of the population by now.
Do you so how do you feel about the J&J vaccine? Like, how are you feeling about it?
I mean, I personally wouldn't really want to take it. I think it's good that they're taking it off the market, or I mean, not off the market, but out of the other vaccines that they're giving out, because I think that the other ones are a lot more safe from what they've shown so far.
Yeah. Okay. So here, let me walk you through the J&J one. So, Jeff, can you guys put up the next slide, right? So this particular vaccine, right? So there are 6 young women between the ages of, like, say 18 and 99 who had this really unique experience of clotting, blood clots, right? Which can be very dangerous. We've given the vaccine to 7 million people. Okay. So now, so it's primarily these 6 women, this event that's happened with 6 people. Okay. That would mean that if you went to 11 Penn State football games and you knew that you went to these 11 games, and of those, there is 105,000, 7,000 people, and that one person in those 11 games is going to die just being at the game, right? Would you go to the game, or would you, of all those people, right? One every 11 games. That means you go to 11 games, and of all those people that went to 11 games, over 1 million people, one of them is going to die. Would you go to the games?
Well, I mean, yeah, I probably still would. And also because the vaccine is most likely if it's gonna kill someone, it's most likely gonna be an older person. But I mean, still though, the vaccine, like, the goal of it is not to kill people, it's to make them immune, or at least fairly resistant to COVID.
Yeah. And yet the idea here is that when we don't understand numbers, we have emotional reactions to things that can really lead us down a path that actually could be really problematic, right? So I don't have any thoughts about whether they should or should not pull the vaccine off the market, but it's 6 people and it's 7 million people who it's been administered to. And so when you start to look at the numbers like that, we say, whoa, hang on a second. Like, what are we talking about, right? And so sometimes we develop these emotional reactions to things that really, we do a service to ourselves to step back and say, hang on a second, what's actually happening here? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think part of it is definitely the media trying to make people a lot more emotionally invested in a lot of that stuff. So,
well, yeah, it is. And, again, I'm not saying whether they should or should not temporarily pull it off the market till they figure out what's going on. I have no thoughts about that. All I know is, from a numbers perspective, those are the numbers we're looking at based on what they're saying. And I'm like, wow, that's actually doesn't seem that scary to me. I'm probably more likely to succumb to death in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, it's oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, man. How many, so the whole class here, there's a certain trigger warning to this whole class, because I'm going to talk about some things that really they hit home for a lot of people. Okay, so you and I are now going to have a conversation about sexual assault. And I want to ask you, like, how many reported sexual assaults across the board are fabricated? Do you have any thoughts on that? First off, let me ask you, how many times have you had a conversation about whether a sexual assault was real or somebody was making it up?
I don't think I've ever had a conversation with anyone personally about that, but I mean, I actually don't know the numbers on that, but I've heard that it actually happens somewhat fairly often, of there being fake, like, accusations.
Okay, how many times have you heard people talking about that? Fake accusations. Like
talking about it happening to them, like them doing it, or them knowing someone.
Or just somebody like your friends or something. It's like, oh yes, that's so and so, but I don't know if we believe that or whatever the case is, right? How much is that in the ether, right?
Probably more than it should.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really hear it a lot, but like, I don't know. I feel
more than it should.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear it, that, it's one thing after another, right? It's sort of like, we think about the Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, who was brought on, and that was a huge piece at the center of it, right? We think about Clarence Thomas going back 25 years. I mean, it seems like it's a really common conversation that people have.
Yeah, or rather, like, besides saying that it's a false accusation, also like trying to downplay it, saying that like the female did something that like caused it to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So, but what you've heard is that it's actually more common than we realize. You said, or that you've heard that, but
yeah.
Okay. So now here's what I want to ask. Like, so that number that matters, right? Because sexual assault is quite widespread, not only in our culture but in other cultures. The numbers of women and men who have been sexually assaulted, and most men who are sexually assaulted by other men, but it's not uncommon for men to be sexually assaulted by women. It's not, but it's quite widespread. Do you have any sense of what the numbers are? Like how many women experience some form of sexual assault?
I think it's like 1 in 6 women have been sexually assaulted, but I think it's something more for like sexual harassment. And then for men, I'm not sure. I think like a third or a fifth as often or something like that.
Okay, so if you think about let's stick with 1 in 6 for a second. Okay, well, we can be conservative and say 1 in 7. I don't know. Let's stick with 1 in 6 because that's actually a fairly conservative number. Sit with that number it's not a number. It's actually faces, right? So start picking the women out in your life. Your mom. Do you have a sister?
I have 2. Yeah.
Okay, your 2 sisters. Your mom. You have any grandmothers?
Yeah, I have 2.
Okay, 2 grandmothers. That's 5 already. So now, do you have a girlfriend?
No.
Okay, so do you have some other women close to you? Do you have who else is really close to you? You have some women friends?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you have aunts. You have aunts, cousins.
Yeah. Yep.
Can we get numbers of women who you're really close with? Can we get it to 12 pretty easily?
Definitely 12 easily. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 of the 12. Okay, listen. So let me just take, we're going to take 12 women in your life. Okay, so now we're going to move away from the numbers thing. Because this is what happens. Like, well, 1 in 6 women. Okay, hang on. It's not 1 in 6 women. So now for you, it's 1 in 6 mother, sister, grandmother, friends, aunts, right? And for me, same thing. Not my mother. I mean, but same thing.
Yeah.
And that 1 in 6 is different. It's like, it's real, right? So now when we start talking about false accusations, it's higher. It's like, it's high. Well, I've heard that it's relatively high, which is what most people do, right? This is what most people do. And then suddenly this is like, well, hang on a second. That would mean that, first off, we've now got 12 people in your life. The random sample is 2 of them are going to experience some form of sexual assault.
Yeah.
Okay. So how is that for you to actually see it that way? 2 women really close to you in your life will be victims of sexual assault.
I think it's just way too high of a number. I mean, I don't think any of my close friends or close relatives or friends who are female, from what I know, have been sexually assaulted. But like that just takes away more people that that it's not happening to, which means that for other people that I know, it could easily be 3 or 4 people that they know.
Okay, so the FBI recognizes that says that only about a third of all sexual assaults are actually reported.
Mhm.
So that means you have a 2 out of 3 chance that if one of them has been a victim of a sexual assault, you wouldn't know about it.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I think it's just, I don't know how to solve it as a problem, but I think it's just terrible that it's happening. And obviously there has to be change.
Okay. So one way is this, right? One way is for people like you and I to start putting faces out there, right? Because there are a lot of women in this class who have experienced sexual assault, and there are some men who have as well. Right? So like, I'm aware of that. As I'm talking right now here, you and I, 2 men are talking, and I'm aware of that. And I think you're probably aware of that. Certainly.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Okay.
For sure.
So here, so can you put these numbers up? Put the next slide up. I want to show you. You can look on the stream and see these numbers. So it's not impossible to assess the number of the percentage of false accusations that are out there when it comes to sexual assault. But peer-reviewed studies, this was one particular study, but there are a lot of other studies that go, it's somewhere between 2 and 10%. Okay? False accusations in some way. Something got stated that really wasn't exactly what happened. And the FBI estimates that it's about 8%, and up to 8%. But the FBI also says that number is a little inflated because we only know about 35% of all assaults are actually reported. And so therefore we don't know, that would mean that number is actually probably a lot lower, because we're probably only gonna hear certain things, right? So here's what happens. So you can bring Quinn back on, right? So here's the thing. So I hear this conversation going on all the time. Like, I mean, not among my friends, but I'm going to hear it in the media. I listen to people. I hear students having dialogues about it and this sort of thing. And then when someone has experienced sexual assault, and then, okay, so that's right here. And then the moment someone says, oh, well, but how do we know it's not a false accusation, but it could be a false accusation, then that's over here. And then suddenly now it's 50-50. The whole conversation gets turned into a 50-50 thing. It may be sexual assault. It may have actually happened, but it may not have happened, right? Because the moment you enter the doubt into the picture, into the conversations, it goes from this like, well, this person has stated that they have experienced or been the victim of a sexual assault. And the moment you impose doubt in, it goes to the other half, which is no, it's yes. And the doubt makes it a no. The doubt doesn't make it like, okay, well, we go from 100% to like, now there's a little bit of doubt. It may be 50%. Before we know it, we're talking about whether it's true or not true. And true or not true is 50%. And so what the numbers though tell us is like, it's not about true or not true. It's actually more like, and if we use that, even if we take the 10 to 5%, because that's on college campuses, so let's average those out and let's make it 95. That means in 19 out of 20 cases where someone has come forward and said, I've experienced sexual assault, 19 out of 20, that person is telling the truth. There's the 1 out of 20, which is like, okay, there's some kind of fabrication going on here. There's something like, I don't really know what it is, but it's not fully true. So now we've moved from 50-50 to 19 and 1. And it's like, okay, now this changes the conversation that we're going to have about sexual assault, because it's no longer, let's employ our rational minds and let's bring our calculators out and let's try to make an assessment as to whether someone is or isn't telling the truth, and whether someone has really been, just like what it means for someone to come forward and to say that and to hold that, and then to have somebody else saying like, yeah, but maybe it's not true. And now it's 50-50. It's not 19 and 1. And like, then it's 50-50. And it's like, oh, like put yourself in the shoes of somebody. These are the data, right?
Yeah.
It's really quite rare that people fabricate this.
Yeah, and it's sad that so many people will just deny that it happens for little to no reason.
Or because it's what we hear, right? Like, so what you said earlier, it's like what you've heard is that the number is relatively high. And that's what I hear as well, right? I mean, that's what I hear out there, right? It's what that's what I imagine. When people immediately start talking yes or no, it's 50-50. And that means 50% of every accusation or everybody who's stepping forward saying, I've experienced sexual assault, 50%, half of those people are not telling the truth. That's what that means. So it's like, so now go ahead.
I think you should, like, basically what I think is that you should believe them until you have a reason to not, like, rather than just saying maybe they didn't for no reason at all. I think it's better to listen to what they're saying.
Well, it's a hard thing, right? Because everybody is innocent till proven guilty. So, right, that's the system upon which we're built. And yet at the same time, imagine it's your sister, your mother, your aunt, your grandmothers, your friends, or me, my own sisters, you know, my friends, it had been my mother, etc., one after another, my wife, whoever. And it just changes things when I start thinking, just using that number, 19 to 1 of every 19 people, it's like, whoa, that's a game changer.
Yeah, for sure.
And how would that change the conversation we have as a society?
Well, I mean, obviously people will stop denying that it happened, or at least not stop denying, but say that a lot less. But like the only problem I have with that is trying to immediately prove if it's a man who assaulted a woman, immediately trying to prove the man, like, just say he's guilty, when in some scenarios, if it actually is a false accusation, it can ruin his life. Okay,
I got you. And so if we use these numbers, 1 out of 20 times,
which is a tiny amount, yeah, for sure, it's a tiny amount.
But for that one person, it's 100% of that person's life.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So if it's me, it doesn't matter that I'm one of 20 people. It's 100% of my life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what's fascinating about it is, given those numbers, it's interesting that how quickly we as a society put out there that we struggle with that, or somehow, I don't know. Anyway, this is just a way to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And showing how numbers can keep us in our heads and not allow us to actually sink to the pain and the heartache that is really at the base of a lot of these things that we're talking about.
Yeah, and look at it more logically rather than just emotionally.
Yeah, right. We look at it logically instead of emotionally. And again, it matters. I will guarantee that there are also people in this class and a man, at least one man in this class, who has been falsely accused of doing something that he didn't do. It's almost a guarantee. And for that person, it's like, yeah, absolutely, right? And it's not a 50-50 thing. It's not a 50-50 thing. So what we're going to talk about next in class is the heartache that exists in the Black community in particular. The heartache is not outweighed by the heartache in the white community, right? Maybe among the police, right? It's not outweighed by that. It's like we have to just hold that heartache as it is, for what it is. And then we hold the heartache of the police, like this police officer who, it would seem, accidentally killed Deontay Wright. Like, oh God, they're not equivalent, right? But
exactly.
We want to hold them both, but we have to hold them on their own terms. And so that's kind of what this is. So,
interesting.
Hey, thanks for that. Thanks for walking into that with me. I'm sure you didn't know that we were going to talk about sexual assault when you came on, but
I love talking about these hard topics. So
All right, good. All right, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, take care. Hey, let's do the niche. You can bring Sylvia on, by the way. Well, here's the thing, right? I'll respond to that. The next top hat is coming on, y'all. It's coming on in 15 minutes. 15 seconds, I mean, sorry. It's coming out right now. So you can bring Sylvia on this. Actually, get ready to bring her on, but I want to say something to the class first. Top hat is up. Hey, listen, a couple people in the chat apparently are saying, hey, could we get a woman to come on and talk about sexual assault instead of just two men? Look, I think there needs to be a balance in these things and in these conversations. And in this particular case, I think, people in the Black and brown community are often talking about how white people need to start talking about racism. And white people need to start moving forward on these topics. And white people need to start figuring out how to address these things. And men need to start talking about sexism, and men need to start talking about sexual assault, and men need to engage in these really difficult conversations, and not just leave it up to women. Like, why do we turn to Black and brown people to have the tough conversations and educate us and school us? And why do we turn to women to have the difficult conversations? And so, last class we had Chloe and Finn talk about transgendered issues. And so and that was amazing. But what about some cisgendered straight person having the vision of transgendered issues and talking about them? Like, that also needs to happen. And so, it feels like it's also, for me as an instructor of this class and as a person who talks about these issues, it's really important for me to bring people into the fold and have conversations with people like I just had with Quinn, who in a way that we typically don't see, and we don't see two men talking about this. And so that's why I move in that direction in this class a lot, and instead of just leaving it up to somebody else. So anyway, that's where we're at. So we have our next volunteer, Sylvia.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am okay. It's a difficult day. It's a really, really difficult day. So I want to, so you are, what's your ancestry again?
Peruvian. Both of my parents are from Peru.
Uh-huh. But you currently live in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're in New Jersey.
Clifton, Patterson,
yeah.
North.
All right. Mm-hmm. Got it. Awesome. Hey, so are you following the events in Minneapolis?
Yes, somewhat. Yeah, I do.
Uh-huh. Are you following the events? Did you follow that event in Virginia of the police officer? His name was Gutierrez. Actually, is a Latino guy who just got fired for pulling over another Latino guy, the Army.
Yes, I know a little bit about it. I heard of it.
Hey, hang on one second.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, can we, so let me ask you, what do you know about the police?
Honestly, and something needs to be changed within the police system. I know I remember taking Crim 100 or something and learning about how the police system was started as after the Civil War, when, the slave patrols they weren't needed, but now they were thrown into these police roles, and that's how Yeah, that's what I know. So it's pretty obvious that racism is within that police system.
It's obvious.
Very
How do you
obvious.
and how do you know that? Like how do you know? Like where do you pull that from? Like what's your sense of that?
Definitely the news, the media,
Uh-huh.
um, what they show us,
Okay.
videos.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Well, let me ask you, let me just ask you a simple question. So can you put the first slide up? The next slide. So this is the if you look at your if you look at your live stream for a second. Um, so this is the team. Are you? Yeah. Okay. There we go. So this is the you know who this is, right, Sylvia?
It still hasn't popped up yet. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So so this is the police officer who killed George Floyd, right? What do you think police around the country think about this guy?
I feel like most of them tried to justify what he did, that he did what he needed to do or something, or try to say maybe if I was in that kind of situation, I would react the same way
Mm.
or
How
something
do
like
you
that.
where did you where does that idea come from? Where's the thought come from you?
I think it's all because they come from the same system and I guess they're trained um, the same way. But I know there are some people that police officers that don't agree what happened with that situation and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh. So here,
mm,
so listen, the way you responded right here is kind of a probably how most students in class would respond, right? If I asked them. I mean, most people would respond that way, right? I mean, certainly most students of color, but most students probably. I mean, this is very similar, right? So here, let me put something. Let me just throw a couple ideas out to you. Well, here, can you go to can you go to the? So we know what he did. And meanwhile, you can put up that next slide. Um, so we know that. So this is the story. This is this officer Gutierrez who just got fired the other day. So do you know the story here?
not fully.
So you might, can
I
I walk
remember
you through it?
yeah, you can walk me through it. I remember seeing the images, but I'm not the story completely.
Okay, so the gentleman on the right was coming home from his uh, from work, right? I think he's in the National Guard, so he was coming up from a. It was at night. It was late at night. He was coming down a dark road. Police saw that he didn't have tags on his license plate. He had tags on his window, but you know apparently they didn't see that, or they didn't want to see it, or whatever the case is. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They didn't see it. They turned their lights on. They followed him. He was on a dark road, and he said, "I'm not going to stop on this dark road." So he put his flashers on and he kept going because he knew there was a convenience store up ahead. That's where they are right now. You can see behind the police officer is a gas station, as a gas pumps, right? So it's really lighted. He pulls up. The cops come up to him with his. He rolls his window down. Cops come up to him with his gun drawn, and is really pissed and starts yelling. And this guy, the guy in the car is a Latino guy, right? So he's
Mhm.
black Latino. The guy on the left is white or mixed Latino. Okay, mestizo. Imagine he's probably mestizo. He looks mestizo. So uh, the guy he immediately starts yelling at the cop, right? I don't have to go through the transcript. It's worth reading though. You know what the cop said and so on, right? But the cop starts yelling at him. It's like, you know, why didn't you stop? And he's like, look, I didn't want to stop it on dark road. So put your hands out the window. Then he starts giving him these mixed commands, right? Open your car door, and he can't because the cop has his gun drawn now, right? So his hands are out the window. So you can't like reach down to open the door because, you know, so he doesn't do that. And the cop's like, turn the key off, turn the car off, open the door, keep your hands out the window. It's just all this crazy stuff, right? The cop's just pissed. And he's just, you know, you should be, the guy's like, I'm afraid. He's like, you should be afraid, you know, that kind of shit. The cop's just being really aggressive. In the end, the cop takes his pepper spray and just sprays it all over the guy's car, right? And he's in his car. And so when you see him wincing right there, so the guy, the lieutenant, he's an officer in the Army, right? So he maintains his composure by not reacting in any way that could be really dangerous. You see him right now, his eyes, like he's been like sprayed directly with pepper spray. This hurts, man. You ever got pepper spray in the eyes?
Nope.
Yeah, okay, I have. It really hurts. Okay. So so he holds his composure, gets the door open, and everything just kind of falls apart. The cops just smacks him in the leg a few times, all sorts of things. It's just not a good scene. In the end, the police officer basically says, hey, this didn't have to be this way, but you didn't act in the right way. And so if you would have acted in the right way, we wouldn't be here. So if you don't report this, well, I'm just going to let you go without a citation. Well, the guy ended up reporting it, and he filed a lawsuit. And the police officer, Officer Gutierrez, was fired. Now, none of that had to happen, because the police officer could have walked up to him and said, listen, why didn't you stop? Why'd you just put your flashers on? And the guy would have said, because I'm afraid, man. Like, come on. I wanted to get up where this lighted area was. And it's better for you, the police officer, because you can see inside my car. And then you know that nothing's going to happen. The bright lights are shining down on me, right? You're not going to be afraid, because it's a really dangerous thing for police to do. Stop a car at night. Okay. So now, what do you think police think about Officer Gutierrez across the country? What do you think police officers think about him and what he did and the fact that he got fired?
I would definitely say the same thing as I was saying before, like try to justify what he was doing and stuff, or like it was more like in that moment he reacted the way he did, but honestly there's definitely other ways he could have handled that situation. He kind of escalated the situation when it wasn't really that serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the driver of the car should have complied and should have done whatever, and the police, they're going to defend the cop in some way. Just like,
I mean, what the National Guard guy did, he had a good reason, like pulling over towards a gas station. It's lighter, and obviously
doesn't matter, right? When the cops said, the lights go on, you pull over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think cops? So do you think cops would support Gutierrez? Officer Gutierrez?
Mm-hmm. I think so, but
okay, so here, you don't know, right? Okay, but you would imagine so. Okay, so here, let me tell you a story, right? So I actually have a lot of experience with police. In fact, recently I've been involved in a conversation with the entire police force of a city in the United States, right? So I meet weekly with police officers, and we talk about all of this stuff, right? And I've been privy to, these are not recorded conversations. These are just conversations with me and with them, and nobody else is in them. And we talk about all sorts of racism and all sorts of police actions and all of these kinds of things, examples like this, and what happens and what they think and how they think. And they open up to me. Like, I really hear the inside. They hold nothing back. So anybody who's going to be racist is going to be racist there. They just are themselves on that. It's a Zoom call, right? So there might be like last week there were 13 of us, 14 of us on the call. Week before that, there were 18 of us, and these are all officers and so on, right? Now, so I actually have an idea of what police think about a lot of this stuff, and very few Americans do. Like, you do if you have family members who are police, but even then, I get to hear what police officers are saying amongst other officers, right? Not with their families, not with anybody else. This is just them, right? And I will tell you that every single officer who's talked about Derek Chauvin and the murder of George Floyd sees it as a murder of George Floyd. Every single officer with whom I've spoken, and they're into the hundreds, right? Every single officer thinks that he should be in jail. He should be in prison. Not a question. It nauseates them to see that video. And when they watch videos like that, they say again and again, it nauseates them. This other guy, Gutierrez, nauseates them. This guy has an ego problem. He shouldn't be on the force. He can't take an ego like it. Yeah, the guy's supposed to stop, but like, okay, but you don't come at a person with your ego like that. You don't do that. And that's an ego issue. You don't belong in uniform.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thinking. So like, I don't think that that's how every police officer in the United States thinks.
Yeah.
But every single person who I've asked, I said, okay, you got friends in other police forces around the country and so on and so forth, right? Other units and so on. What do they think? And everyone says they've never talked to a single police officer anywhere who doesn't think that Derek Chauvin should be in prison. He murdered George Floyd, right? And this idea that there's a wall of blue, that police protect other police because they're all trained in the same way. They're not trained to murder. Killing happens, right? It happens, but they're not. But police are not robots, right? And one after another, what they say is the weight of killing somebody, murdering, killing anybody, whether it's in self-defense or anything, killing somebody, that hangs on us. As everybody in any military anywhere in the world will say, that the first time you kill someone is the most nauseating experience you can ever imagine, right? And then to imagine to kill an innocent person, right? So what do you think about that?
I definitely, well, first I was kind of surprised when you said, like, when you were asking other police officers how they actually do see it as a murder and not, they don't try to justify it. So it was kind of surprising to me because I guess like not the media, but like how they were trained, they were all kind of somewhat trained the same way and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, but I still do believe that even if you are a police officer, you are contributing to the systematic racism within that system and stuff. So even if you don't agree on like what happened, there's still somewhat part of it.
Well, yes, and by that measure, we're all part of it, right? Like, by that measure, we're all part of it. And this is where it gets really difficult, right? So for me personally, I'm not an apologist for police. I'm not an apologist for power. I'm not an apologist for military. I'm none of that. That's not part. I am a person who seeks the truth. And so if we say, well, but then if you are part of the police in any way, then you're reproducing a system of power. And I'm like, well, we all are then. Because the United States, if you think about what the United States has done in Latin America, including in Peru over the years, the imperialism coming from the US, it's like, well, we're all part of that now. And now you're part of it because now you're paying taxes in the US and I'm part of it. And so we're all here. Here we are. And now we get into this really very difficult place to be. And so a quick thought on that.
No, honestly, you're right. Because this country was built on imperialism and racism.
Okay, but that doesn't take the police off the hook.
That doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one final one. So the most recent, can you just put the final headline up? So the Minnesota officer who killed Deontay Wright, right? Meant to fire a taser.
Yeah.
Are you aware? Did you watch the footage? Did you listen to it? Watch it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so are you in agreement? So you can bring Sylvia back on. Do you feel like, from what you watched, do you feel like, yes, it looks like she meant to fire the taser?
If you are trained to do your job, I feel like you would know the difference between a taser and a gun. I don't think it's accident. It wasn't by accident that she grabbed her she was supposed to grab her taser.
Uh-huh.
So
So,
I
so,
believe on that.
so, so people don't make mistakes.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you're trained to do some kind of like job like this,
If you're trained to do a job like this, you
like
don't make mistakes.
mistakes like that, no.
So you never do. You're trained, you don't. It's not
like
possible to make a mistake.
make a mistake in which could involve someone's life.
No, but hang on. It's not possible to make a mistake to think you're holding your gun, your taser, but you're actually holding your gun.
I mean,
you understand, like, so the reason I'm asking you this question is because this is the moment at which your heart goes toward grief, or your thoughts go toward grief, or they go toward your rational brain. And if they go toward your rational brain, that means like, no, it's not possible to make a mistake and therefore X. Or it is possible to make a mistake. Like, oh, shit. Now I got to sit with the grief of what that means. What does that mean if she truly made a mistake? How do I sit with that grief on top of the grief that's being held by so many people of yet another killing at the hands of the police?
mm-hmm.
Do you see that right there? You go this way toward grief, or you go this way toward your mind and you just close the grief off because you just go toward your rational thinking.
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah. This is the question, right? This is what we're all being asked all the time. Instead of just like releasing the rational thoughts, just like, here's what it is and here's what we think, to go to the place of, oh my God, right? To go to the place of just, oh my God, it is so much more difficult to live in a world that is not black and white, right? To see, for example, some police officers, there are some bad cops and there are good cops. And most cops are probably quite good cops. And it's looking at Penn State. It's looking at everything. It's looking at the migrants coming over from the United States. Migrants coming up from Peru. Some of them are actually thieves, rapists, and killers, right? As Donald Trump said. But the vast majority are not that. Now, what do? How do we hold that? How do you hold it?
I think I see what you're saying, but I think it's I want to say you're doing that, but like, I don't know how to put it in words, but like, whatever they do isn't because of what they are, as in Latino, Black, white, Asian.
Yeah.
So I think it's what they're trying to put it. So they're rapists, thieves, so they must be Hispanic, so they must be Black.
They must be something.
You must be something, which is not good. They commit these crimes because they're just bad people in general.
Yep. Okay, so now take the police, right? I mentioned last week to Finn about a police officer who has a transgendered child and said, you know what? He said, I would rather love my child. He said, I had a really hard time with it. He said, but in the end, I said to myself, I'd rather love my child than hold on to an idea of how I think the world should be. And I'm like, oh man, that's cool, right? That's a human being right there, right? And now if we have to start seeing this in the complicated ways, it just makes life really more difficult. Yeah. Hey, thanks, by the way. Sylvia, I really appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice job. Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, let's do the next top hat niche, and then we can bring Tori on, or Victoria, or Tori. I'm not sure which one it is. Victoria, but you can do the next top hat, right, niche? It's going up. In 15 seconds, it'll be up. Hey, Victoria, how are you?
Hello. Good. How are you?
I am okay. It's like one of these days. It's a really difficult day.
Yeah.
Are you on campus, or are you in State College, or are you somewhere else?
I'm at home right now, but typically I'd be on campus.
Yeah.
Oh, off-campus apartments, but in State College.
So let me ask you, as another white person, right? What are you thinking about this conversation? What are you thinking about what's going on?
I'm more confused than anything. There's a lot of justification, I think, right now for her that I feel like there shouldn't be. And there's also a lot of things that I feel like just don't add up in my head. I was typing in the chat a little, but you could see in certain videos of what was happening that she tried to take off the safety, which is making people believe she actually meant to grab the taser, because police-issued tasers have safeties and their Glocks don't. There's all sorts of things, but it's so difficult for me to understand how a 25-year cop and a veteran who was trained how to fight and use a gun could pick up a gun and not realize it's their gun, or vice versa. You know what I mean? It just doesn't quite make sense to me that you can switch that so easily, that it just is an accident or a mistake.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. When you say there's a lot of justification, you said there's a lot of, what do you mean?
I feel like this happens a lot when we're talking about anything with police brutality type things, or anything race related. There's a lot of issues that I feel like people do their best to justify, like how you mentioned earlier that everyone likes to try and picture a world where there isn't bad things happening, so you're waking up in a decent world that you can view. I feel like that's what people try to do a lot, because they're sitting here and thinking, well, I want to think of best case scenario rather than worst case scenario. So people are thinking, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I have a really cool idea right now I'm going to throw out to you. What do you think about the conversation about sexual assault? You should think about the way we frame that with the numbers, about how people say like, oh, but women make stuff up, and like, so therefore it's 50-50 and that kind of thing. Like, how do you?
Personally, it bothers me only for the fact that, and this is coming from just what I know as a woman and from my friends that are, I feel like people that don't get talked to about it don't understand how frequently it actually happens. If you're not close enough to the women in your life, you're not going to hear the stories. You're not going to hear the things that other girls tell other people. I said in the chat when you were talking about false allegations and things, I said it's really weird to me how I'll be on social media and a girl will post their story and then it's just a bunch of people saying this is a lie, this is fake, how do I know it's true, this, that, and the third, and that the numbers are so much lower than everyone thinks they are. And it's genuinely like we're trying so hard to get people to hear us and they're doing everything possible not to listen. I know just from my friends entirely, like I said this in the chat too, there are 5 of us, me and my 4 close friends, and out of the 5 of us, 3 have been raped and all 5 have been sexually assaulted.
Wow. So 1 out of 6 is actually, so go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
It's I think it's more frustrating than anything that we just try constantly to say this is a really serious issue, and then time after time again, it's constantly minimized as small as people try to make it, so that there's not fear being pushed around or that it doesn't seem as big of an issue, so that we're not demonizing men in any way, when we're really just asking to be heard, I think. And it's just frustrating to me that the numbers feel like they have to be diminished so we're not afraid, but we kind of have reason to, especially, I mean, me and my friends, I had a conversation with one of my guy friends, and he said something, and I said, well, I don't trust men anymore. Like, I have guy friends and I love them with all of my heart, but the closest men to me, the people that hurt me the way that they did, that sexually assaulted me, they were my friends. They weren't random strangers that came out in parking garages. They were people I would trust with my life.
Yep.
And he was like, well, I didn't do anything to you. And I said, you didn't have to. But the men I put my trust in did, and now I can't.
And so if I put my trust in you, that what you're asking me to do is put my trust in you. And I know what happened when I did that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So when you just said, okay, so someone posts something on social media and someone says, how do we know if it's true? Okay. So what that does is, like, it's on social media, it's 100% true. How do we know it's true? Oh, it might be 100% false. That means it's 50-50. Now we're in 50-50 territory. This is what I was getting at, right? So you see that. Yep. It's like, but we're not in 50-50 territory, right? We're still in it at most, again, 19-1 territory. Like, let's be in that territory, right? And this is what you're saying. So now let's take that same idea and let's apply it to the police, right? Let's apply it to police being violent, police not just killing people, but police being violent, police being, treating people differently because of their race or gender or the way they speak or whatever the case is, right? And let's say, like, okay, so what happens now when we have the reality of the conversation is that police are not robots. So you're going to help me with this, right? So I'm going to take the police one, and you're going to take sexual assault, and you and I are going to have this conversation, right? Police are not robots. Police don't want to kill people. Police do kill people. Police do treat people poorly. There are a lot of stories. There are a lot of bad cops, but there are also a lot of good cops. So now it's like, okay, where do we go here? Right? Where do we go? How do we hold the good police next to the bad police? How do you hold the male friends who did X with the male friends who say, but I didn't do X and I'm never going to do X. I'm never going to treat you like that. I'm never going to do that. How do you hold that? And how do we hold the same with police without making excuses for them?
I saw this one video, I think it was a comedian that said this absolutely perfectly. He said, I told myself that it would never be my friends, that it would never be the people that I trust and that I hold around me that would do something like this, until one of my friends he raped one of his other friends. And he said, and I know that there was certain things in my friend's behavior that I didn't call out, that I didn't notice, that I didn't say. And he said that it's not about thinking you're a good person and you're not doing the bad thing, therefore you're not a bad individual. He said it was something along the lines of, if 1 in 10 men are shit and the 9 others do nothing, then they might as well not be there. Mm-hmm. He said that you have to actively almost try to help. I don't know how to phrase this. Essentially, educate people around you if you catch behaviors that are either unsafe, not okay, you know what I mean? Behaviors that you can tell shouldn't be allowed in a conversation.
Yep. And then what happens if you don't see it, or you don't realize, or you don't think about it, or you don't see it, or you're not aware of it? What then?
I think that's also part of the education too. It's about listening to the people that it's affecting or that have heard about it, that know what they're talking about, people that understand it more than you might, and allowing that to be based into how you go about things. Like, I know there's a lot of people that don't even understand that bad things have happened to them because they don't understand what that looks like in a genuine sense. So it takes them a long time to even realize what they've been through, other than the people around them understanding what they've been through before. You know what I mean?
Yep. So it's kind of like, so in this particular case, it's like you, first off, you just believe. So that's why these numbers, and again, I use the middle number when I said 19 to 1. If I use the 2 number, that's 50, that's 49 to 1. 40, there's one person who is fabricating the story versus 49 people, and again, mostly women who are not. That's using the lower number, but I'm trying to be fair to the data as fair as I can possibly be, and then the FBI data. So I'm like, okay, hang on, we're going to go 5 to 1. So one would be, say like, well, I have a 19 out of 20 chance that this is all happening here and this is real. So I probably should jump in because I need to really, now what can I do? And what would I do differently if I really believe that?
Yeah.
What would I as a human being? Yeah. And if you're my friend, I want to treat you with respect. So what would I do? How would I act? And that would be the question that I would ask myself. So now go with police. So there are a lot of people on the streets of Minneapolis. There are a lot of people in many places, but in Minneapolis who are emoting a lot of grief, sadness. It often comes out as anger, but behind the anger is grief and sadness. So what then? Without getting in our minds about, well, did the cop mean to pull the trigger or not pull the trigger? He had to pull the safety off. Because did you hear what I said to Sylvia? Like, people make mistakes. Even trained people. Like, I've been wearing this microphone, these 2 microphones for 30 years, this one microphone. And there are times when I have, last week actually, I reached around to, this is what I use. And when I teach at Penn State, I've used a microphone, the same microphone for 30 years. And I reached around to turn my mic off, and I turned this off, which is my earpiece, and not the microphone off. And I think I've been doing that for 30 years. I'm a professional. I do this. There were days when I did it. I taught 5 days a week. This is what I do. I turn it on, off, on, off, on. I've done this on live television. I've been on live television across the state of Pennsylvania, turning my mic on and off and talking to people, right? I never make that mistake. I made the mistake last week. It's not a big deal. But I'm like, how the hell did I do that? How did I do that? But nonetheless, right, without going into that space, how do you hold the grief and the sadness on the streets of Minneapolis? So what I want you to do is call forth the grief and the sadness around sexual assault, like what you would want people to understand, but then translate it to the streets of Minneapolis. What do you do with that? What should we do with it?
I think it's really important to translate it into something effective rather than turning it into anything where your message is being missed. I feel like at a time like this where something bad happens and it stirs up a lot of people talking, it's a really good time to start advocating for the things that need to be advocated for.
Mm-hmm.
Like things, better training, whatever that needs to be advocated for, instead of taking it, because you're supposed to be sad. You're never not going to feel grief in situations like that. If you didn't, you wouldn't have empathy, you wouldn't be human. But I think it's important to take that and use it for good in situations that you need to. You know what I mean? Take it to start a difference and make a change instead of not sulking or sitting with it, but using it so that it wasn't not for nothing, but helps push what you need to get done to make a change. Okay, I like that. That's really cool. You know, also the thing that when you were talking about, you know, you're talking about you and your friends and sexual assault, right? First off, I want to say to you that it's pretty amazing that you're willing to come on the stream and say that. And it's really powerful. And I want to hold that space that you're speaking on behalf of so many other people, almost all of them women in the class, but not all women, right? You're speaking on behalf of so many people, and to say that it's I don't want to say it's brave, because that just feels like one of those words that people use that doesn't sit, but it's powerful. It's really powerful. So I want to acknowledge that, right? And so
what do you want me to know? Like, what do you want then? Speak on behalf of all of your friends. What do you want men to know?
I think one of the biggest things is that if you see, I'm not saying blindly believe everything that you read. I don't ever promote that. I'm big on educating yourself with everything that you find or use. But I think one of the biggest things is if you see, like how I do on social media, and you see someone telling their story and advocating for themselves or advocating for women, don't take that as an opportunity to cut women down, say it doesn't happen, or translate the conversation towards men, because that's going to sound awful. But one of the biggest things I've ever seen on social media is whenever women are talking about their experiences, they go, oh, but this happens to men too. And of course it does. And every genuine feminist will tell you that that's miserable and horrible, and they never want it to happen to anybody. But there's a time and a place. And whenever women are talking about their experiences, it's time to sit and listen and help. Because if you genuinely cared about it happening to men, you would care about it happening to women. So I think it's really important to stay focused. And if you see people in those comment sections or your friends saying, oh, it doesn't happen, this is just a joke, it isn't. Call them out on it. That shouldn't be funny. Things like that.
And look around at some of your closest female friends, and like with Quinn, right? Your mother, your sisters, your grandmothers, like look them in the faces and say out loud, it's just a joke, and you can't, because it's not a joke. Now, if we take what you just said and we translate that to what Black Americans are saying about their experience with police and so on, the same thing. It's like, just listen, right? Don't turn it into a white thing. Don't turn it into right now, it doesn't need to get turned into a police thing. It doesn't need to get turned, no, just sit with that right now. We don't have to take it out beyond that. Just sit with the pain, sit with the stories that are being told, and just hold that. So the two really, I think, are like very much on the two issues are on parallel paths in a way. It's really intense, man.
Can I just say one last thing, because I can see this, see the chat in the stream.
Yeah, do, but I want to just, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
I'll go super quick. I was noticing the talk about wanting convictions and wanting justice for yourself. Sometimes that's not how it is. I know I never got it for mine, because the people that affected me, I was afraid, A, they wouldn't believe me, B, I would be treated like garbage by the cops, C, one of the instances, I didn't know anything had happened to me until afterwards. And it's really hard to sit and talk about. I know I had a girl tell me that she had to come out of the stream for a bit because she was really upset. And I was like, well, I got you. I'll tell you when the top hats are. Like this, it's an awful situation to have to sit and re-traumatize yourself and put yourself back into that situation mentally. So I just wanted to say that not everyone's situation is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, the only way we move forward to address these issues in the way that they need to be addressed is for all of us to speak about them in the way that we can speak about them. And that's what it is. And we're all in different places. Hey, the top ed is up, by the way. So if anybody, hey, Tori, so Victoria, right?
Whichever one.
All right. Hey, I want to, in Niche, you can just leave the top ed up for an extra minute or two, okay? Okay. Hey, I just want to go back and say really thanks. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I don't want to say thanks. That feels in some way patron. It's not thanks. It's just like, yeah.
Well, thanks for having me and being able to talk to everyone who might not know the things that I've felt or heard. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's important, it's valuable, and it has an impact. Trust me, it really has an impact with people. Yeah, it really does. So I know that from my all of my experience as an instructor, as someone who talks about these issues. I know it has an impact when people hear from somebody such as yourself. So just know that.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, everybody. And make sure that you get your globals in. Y'all do not miss a global. Don't sign up for a bunch of them. Just sign up for one and make it happen. And that's where we're at. Okay. There's a limited number of seats, so get in there and make it happen. And hey, thanks for the class today, everybody. Really intense class. Really, man. We'll see you on we'll see you on Thursday.
Can you say you've seen an ocean? Can you say you've seen the sun? What would you do if it was gone? 'Cause I have seen them, all my love. I have seen them, all my son. And I can see that it's begun. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Out there, my brother, take a step back.